All right, we're about to dive into a claim that is so big, it honestly sounds like something out of a movie. It's a story pulled from our source material about a single secret document that they say changed everything. This is the story of the World Domination Treaty.
And this quote, this is really the heart of the matter. They sold the world, and they didn't even ask. It just perfectly sets the stage for a story that questions the very foundation of global power. It suggests a transaction happened behind closed doors that affects every single one of us.
So this whole theory really boils down to one central question. What if every government, every law, every election for more than 2 decades has been a total sham? That's the huge premise we're unpacking today, based entirely on the source's claims.
Okay, so our first section gets right to the absolute core of this allegation. We're not talking about a military takeover or some political revolution, but a legal one that was supposedly executed with just a signature on a contract.
You know, the thing that makes this theory so compelling is just how specific it is. It points to one exact day, October 6th, 1998. On this day, the German government apparently sold a piece of property, but in the fine print, they either accidentally or maybe not so accidentally sold everything.
So the key to this whole story is a document with a very, very long German name, the Staatensuccessionsurkunde 1400/98. Now that roughly translates to something like a state succession deed. According to the source, it all started as a pretty boring sale of an old NATO barracks, but it had a hidden legal tripwire inside.
And that immediately raises a huge question, right? How could one little property sale in Germany possibly have global consequences? Well, the theory all hangs on a single, very carefully worded clause that they say kicked off a legal domino effect.
The entire theory pivots on this one phrase, as a development unit. I mean, it sounds like standard, boring legal talk, right? But according to the source, those specific words didn't just transfer the land and the buildings, they transferred the actual sovereignty that was attached to that NATO property.
And here's how the chain reaction supposedly went down. First, the property gets sold, and that clause transfers the sovereignty. Then, and this is the really wild part, because the property's utilities were hooked into the public grid, that sovereignty allegedly infected the entire network. It spread from Germany to all of NATO and then to the UN, which basically made the new buyer the legal owner of the entire world.
So if the world was sold, that brings up the obvious question. Who bought it? This is where a real person comes into the story, and the source alleges it wasn't some corporation or a shadowy group, it was a single person who had no idea what was happening. And get this, at the time of the sale, the buyer was just 19 years old, a kid. The source material paints him as completely innocent in all this, just a young guy who thought he was making a smart real estate deal, totally unaware he was about to become the technical owner of the entire planet.
So, what happened next? Well, according to his own memoirs, which are cited in the source, as soon as he found out what he'd really bought and refused to play ball with the powerful people who wanted to control his new authority, they came after him, hard. The goal, they claim, was to break him, ruin his reputation, and sideline him legally so they could take over his claim. And this quote from the source material just perfectly sums up the alleged consequences. If this contract is real, then every government's authority since 1998 has been fake. Every law, every election, it's all just a performance, a big show to keep up the illusion of control.
So, where is this all heading? What's the endgame? The source claims this isn't just some weird story from the past, but an active plot that's building towards a moment they call Tag X, or Day X.
Tag X is described as the moment the German state will finally play its hand. There's supposedly a secret court ruling, all ready to go, that will be unveiled to the world. And that ruling will officially confirm that the 1998 contract is valid, which would basically blow up the world order as we know it. And the core of this whole plot is some seriously tricky legal footwork. After getting the original buyer out of the picture, the German state has supposedly started legal action on his behalf, but without his permission. In effect, they're suing the entire world, using the buyer's legitimate claim to establish their own global power.
And the source doesn't just talk in general terms either, it names names. The German politician Friedrich Merz is accused of threatening the buyer directly. And, get this, it claims that Donald Trump, way before he was president, met with 2,000 world leaders back in the year 2000 to talk about this exact property, which suggests the elites have known about this for a long, long time. Okay, so let's say Tag X happens. What then?
The source material presents two totally different paths for humanity, a real fork in the road between a global disaster and a kind of high-tech utopia.
And I mean, you couldn't get more different than these two outcomes. On one side, you've got the tag X catastrophe. Think World War III with no rules, money becomes worthless, all laws vanish, a planet run by brute force. And on the other side is the future the original buyer supposedly wants, an electronic technocracy, a world run by AI for the good of all people, with universal basic income and no more corruption.
So, faced with these two extremes, the source doesn't recommend fighting back or starting a revolution. It suggests something much, much simpler, something that gets at the very nature of power itself.
The proposed solution is radical, but it's simple: total refusal. A global, peaceful, collective act of just not complying. The argument is that the entire system, whether it's legit or not, only runs on one thing: our obedience.
So what does that actually look like? According to the source, it's about questioning and refusing any command that serves this supposedly illegitimate system. It's withdrawing our consent, all at once. If the leaders declare a war and nobody shows up to fight, well, there's no war.
And that really leaves us with this final thought. This whole incredible, complex theory, whether you think it's the hidden truth or just an amazing story, it all boils down to this one simple, powerful question. It challenges all of us to think about where authority really comes from and what might happen if humanity, all at once, just decided to take it back. What is power if people simply stop obeying?